Sarah Martinez had always been different from other girls her age. While her classmates spent their weekends at shopping malls or sleepovers, Sarah found herself at the local shooting range with her grandfather. The 17-year-old had been handling firearms since she was 10, but nobody at Lincoln High School knew about her unusual hobby. Her grandfather, Miguel Martinez, was a retired Marine who had served 3 tours in Vietnam. After losing his wife to cancer 5 years earlier, he had thrown himself into training his only granddaughter in the art of precision shooting. What started as a way to bond had quickly revealed Sarah's extraordinary natural talent. The shooting range was located on the outskirts of town, tucked away behind a strip of pine trees that most people never bothered to explore. Every Saturday morning, Sarah would tell her parents she was going to the library to study. Instead, she would meet her grandfather at the range for hours of intensive training. Miguel had never seen anything like Sarah's ability. Her breathing control was perfect, her stance flawless, and her focus absolute. When she looked through a scope, it was as if the rest of the world disappeared. She could hit targets at distances that made seasoned marksmen shake their heads in disbelief. At school, Sarah was known as the quiet girl, who sat in the back corner of every classroom. She wore oversized sweaters, kept her long dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, and rarely spoke unless directly asked a question. Her teachers often forgot she was there. Her classmates treated her like she was invisible. During lunch, Sarah would sit alone in the library, reading military history books or studying ballistics charts she had printed from the internet. She had memorized wind speed calculations, bullet drop tables, and atmospheric pressure effects on long-range shooting. While other students were gossiping about weekend parties, Sarah was learning about the physics of precision shooting. The mockery started small. Jessica Fleming, the most popular girl in school, would make comments about Sarah's clothes or her habit of eating lunch alone. Soon other students joined in. They called her weird, antisocial, and boring. Sarah never responded to their taunts. She simply focused on her studies and counted down the hours until her next training session. One particularly difficult day, Sarah overheard a group of students making cruel jokes about her appearance. They were laughing about how she probably had never even held a gun, let alone knew how to use one. The irony was almost amusing to Sarah, but it also stung. If only they knew that she could outshoot most professional marksmen in the state. Her grandfather noticed the sadness in her eyes during their next training session. Sarah had just completed a perfect grouping at 800 yards, placing 5 shots within a 2-inch circle. Any military sniper would have been proud of such accuracy, but Sarah seemed distracted. Miguel set down his binoculars and walked over to where Sarah was cleaning her rifle. The weapon was a custom-built precision rifle that he had assembled specifically for her training. Every component had been carefully selected and precisely fitted to match her physical dimensions and shooting style. Sarah finally opened up about the difficulties at school. She explained how isolated she felt, how the other students treated her like she was worthless. Miguel listened without interrupting, understanding the pain in his granddaughter's voice. He had faced similar challenges during his military service, being underestimated because of his quiet demeanor. Miguel told Sarah about his experiences in Vietnam, where the loudest soldiers were often the first to break under pressure. He explained that true strength came from inner confidence, not from seeking approval from others. The best snipers he had known were quiet professionals who let their actions speak louder than words. After their conversation, Miguel made a decision that would change everything. He had been keeping Sarah's abilities secret, respecting her desire for privacy. But he realized that she needed to understand how exceptional her skills truly were. It was time to show her that she was capable of something remarkable. Miguel had maintained connections with several former military colleagues who now worked as civilian marksmanship instructors. He arranged for Sarah to participate in an unofficial shooting competition at a private range used for law enforcement training. The event would be small, with only a handful of experienced shooters participating. Sarah was nervous about the idea of competing against adults, especially trained professionals. She had never shot in front of strangers before, and the thought of possible failure terrified her. Miguel assured her that she was ready, reminding her of the countless hours they had spent perfecting her technique. The night before the competition, Sarah lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Her parents thought she was spending the weekend at a friend's house, another small lie in the web of deception she had built around her shooting activities. She wondered what would happen if she embarrassed herself in front of these experienced marksmen. Miguel had taught her that doubt was a sniper's worst enemy. Fear and uncertainty could ruin even the most perfect shot. Sarah forced herself to remember all the targets she had hit, all the impossible shots she had made during training. She visualized herself at the range, feeling the familiar weight of the rifle in her hands. The next morning, Sarah met her grandfather at the private range. The facility was more professional than anything she had ever seen, with electronic targets and wind measurement equipment. Several men were already there, setting up their equipment and discussing shooting techniques with the easy confidence of people who knew their abilities. As Sarah unpacked her rifle case, she could feel the other shooters watching her. Some seemed curious about the teenage girl in their midst, while others appeared skeptical or even amused. Sarah kept her eyes focused on her equipment, methodically checking each component just as her grandfather had taught her. The range master, a former Army instructor named Tom Bradley, approached Sarah and Miguel. He explained the rules of the competition and handed Sarah a scorecard. Tom's expression suggested he was wondering why a high school student was participating in an event designed for experienced marksmen. Sarah nodded politely and took her assigned shooting position. She could hear whispered conversations behind her, comments about her age and experience level. Some of the men were making quiet jokes about the competition becoming a teaching opportunity, rather than a serious contest. The competition began with a series of precision shots at 300 yards. Sarah watched as the experienced marksmen took their turns, each displaying the confidence that came from years of training and competition. Their shots were good, clustering within acceptable groups for recreational shooters, but nothing exceptional. When Sarah's turn came, she approached the firing line with quiet determination. The other competitors had grown silent, curious to see how the teenage girl would perform. Sarah settled into her shooting position, adjusting her rifle and checking her scope settings with practiced efficiency. The wind was tricky that morning, gusting from different directions at unpredictable intervals. Sarah spent several minutes observing the grass and leaves around the range, reading the subtle signs that would tell her how to compensate for the changing conditions. Her grandfather had taught her that patience was often more important than technical skill. Sarah's first shot struck the target dead center, earning nods of approval from the other shooters. Her second shot landed in almost exactly the same spot, and murmurs of interest began among the spectators. By her fifth shot, she had created a grouping so tight that all 5 bullet holes could be covered by a quarter. Tom Bradley lowered his binoculars and walked over to examine Sarah's target more closely. The grouping was better than anything he had seen from civilian shooters in recent memory. Several of the other competitors gathered around, studying the precise cluster of holes with growing amazement. The competition moved to longer ranges, testing the shooter's abilities at 500 and then 700 yards. As the distance increased, the other marksmen began to struggle with accuracy. Wind became a more significant factor, and the smaller targets demanded greater precision. Sarah continued to shoot with mechanical consistency, her groups remaining impossibly tight at every distance. During a break between stages, Sarah overheard 2 of the competitors discussing her performance. They were speculating about her background, wondering if she was some kind of shooting prodigy or if she had been secretly training with professional instructors. Sarah kept her expression neutral, not wanting to draw additional attention to herself. Miguel watched his granddaughter with growing pride, but also with concern. He could see the other shooters becoming increasingly interested in Sarah's abilities, and he worried about unwanted attention. The whole point of the exercise had been to boost Sarah's confidence, not to make her the center of scrutiny. The final stage of the competition involved shooting at 1,000 yards, a distance that separated serious marksmen from casual enthusiasts. Several of the competitors admitted they had never attempted shots at such extreme range. The target appeared impossibly small through the scopes, and environmental factors became critical to accuracy. Sarah studied the conditions carefully, noting the wind patterns and atmospheric pressure readings. She made subtle adjustments to her scope, calculating the complex ballistics required for such a long shot. Her grandfather had trained her extensively at this distance, but never in front of witnesses. Her first shot at 1,000 yards struck within inches of the bullseye, a result that would have been impressive for any marksman. Her second shot was even closer to center. By her fifth shot, Sarah had achieved something that left the other competitors speechless. She had created a grouping at 1,000 yards that was smaller than most shooters could manage at 300 yards. Tom Bradley called for a ceasefire and walked out to the 1,000-yard target to verify the results. When he returned, his expression was a mixture of disbelief and excitement. He announced that Sarah had just shot the tightest group he had ever witnessed at that distance, including his years as a military instructor. The other competitors crowded around Sarah, bombarding her with questions about her training and experience. Some wanted to examine her rifle, curious about the equipment that had produced such remarkable accuracy. Sarah answered politely but briefly, uncomfortable with the sudden attention. One of the shooters, a former police sniper named Detective James Morrison, asked Sarah about her future plans. He explained that he had never seen natural talent like hers, and that she should seriously consider competitive shooting or even military service. Sarah thanked him for the suggestion but remained non-committal. As Sarah packed up her equipment, several of the competitors approached Miguel to compliment him on his granddaughter's shooting. They praised his instruction and asked about Sarah's training regimen. Miguel accepted their compliments graciously while being careful not to reveal too much about their private training sessions. The drive home was quiet, with Sarah processing the events of the day. For the first time in her life, she had been the center of positive attention for her abilities rather than mockery for her differences. The experience was both thrilling and overwhelming. Miguel could sense his granddaughter's mixed emotions about the competition. He explained that she now understood why he had been so insistent about her training and practice. Sarah possessed a gift that few people were born with, and it was important that she recognized its value. Over the following weeks, word about Sarah's performance began to spread through the local shooting community. Tom Bradley had shared the story with other instructors, and Detective Morrison had mentioned it to his colleagues. Sarah's name started appearing in conversations among serious marksmen throughout the region. Sarah returned to school on Monday morning, carrying the memory of her success like a secret weapon against the daily humiliations. When Jessica Fleming made another cruel comment about Sarah's appearance, Sarah simply smiled and continued walking. She knew something about herself that none of her tormentors could imagine. During lunch, Sarah researched competitive shooting organizations and military marksmanship programs on the library computers. She discovered opportunities she had never known existed, including scholarships for exceptional shooters and specialized training programs. For the first time, she began to envision a future beyond the walls of Lincoln High School. Her grades, which had always been good, began to improve even further as Sarah applied the same focus and discipline from shooting to her academic work. Teachers noticed the change in her confidence, though they couldn't identify the source of her transformation. Miguel continued their weekend training sessions, but now with a different purpose. Instead of simply developing Sarah's skills for their own sake, he began preparing her for the opportunities that her talent might create. He introduced more challenging scenarios and stress-inducing exercises to test her abilities under pressure. One Saturday morning, Miguel surprised Sarah with news that would change everything again. Detective Morrison had contacted him with information about an upcoming regional law enforcement marksmanship competition. The event would include military personnel, police snipers, and elite civilian shooters from across the state. Morrison had specifically requested that Sarah be allowed to participate, despite her age and civilian status. He had convinced the organizers that her abilities warranted an exception to their usual requirements. The competition would be Sarah's first exposure to truly elite-level shooting. Sarah felt a mixture of excitement and terror at the prospect of competing against professional marksmen and military snipers. These would be people whose lives depended on their shooting abilities, not recreational enthusiasts looking for weekend entertainment. The pressure would be unlike anything she had experienced. Miguel assured Sarah that she was ready for the challenge, reminding her that skill was skill regardless of age or experience. He had seen enough during his military service to know that natural talent often trumped years of training. Sarah possessed something that couldn't be taught or acquired through practice alone. The regional law enforcement marksmanship competition was held at Fort Braxton, a military facility 2 hours from Sarah's hometown. Miguel had arranged for them to arrive the night before the competition, allowing Sarah time to familiarize herself with the range and equipment. As they drove through the base's security checkpoint, Sarah felt her heart racing with nervous anticipation. The competition facility was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. Multiple shooting ranges extended for over a mile, with electronic target systems and computer-controlled scoring. Military vehicles dotted the landscape, and personnel in various uniforms moved with purposeful efficiency. Sarah suddenly felt very young and out of place. Registration took place in a large building filled with competitors checking equipment and reviewing course information. Sarah watched as teams of police snipers unpacked expensive rifles and discussed tactical scenarios. Military marksmen compared notes on ammunition performance and scope adjustments. The level of professionalism was intimidating. When Sarah approached the registration table, the volunteer looked confused. She double-checked the participant list several times before finding Sarah's name, clearly surprised to see a 17-year-old girl among the competitors. Several nearby participants overheard the conversation and turned to look at Sarah with curious expressions. Detective Morrison appeared and greeted Sarah warmly, explaining to the registration volunteer that she was his special guest. He introduced Sarah to several other competitors, including Sergeant First Class David Chen, an Army sniper instructor, and Officer Patricia Williams, a police marksman who held several state records. The other competitors were polite but clearly skeptical about Sarah's presence. Some made comments about the competition being for serious professionals, while others questioned whether safety protocols were adequate for someone so young. Sarah felt their doubt like a physical weight, but she also felt a familiar surge of determination. That evening, Miguel and Sarah reviewed the competition format in their hotel room. The event would consist of 4 stages, each testing different aspects of marksmanship skill. Distances would range from 300 to 1,200 yards, with varying weather conditions and time constraints. Points would be awarded based on accuracy, with penalties for missed shots or exceeded time limits. Sarah studied the course layout and weather forecasts, making notes about wind patterns and atmospheric conditions. She cleaned and inspected her rifle with the same methodical care her grandfather had taught her. Every component was checked and rechecked, ensuring that equipment failure wouldn't compromise her performance. The next morning dawned clear and cold, with variable winds that would challenge even experienced marksmen. Sarah arrived at the range early, hoping to observe the conditions before competition began. She found several other shooters already there, testing equipment and studying wind indicators. Sergeant Chen approached Sarah during the warm-up period, curious about her background and training. When she mentioned her grandfather's military service, Chen's attitude shifted from skepticism to respectful interest. He asked detailed questions about Sarah's training regimen and shooting techniques, clearly impressed by her knowledge and preparation. The first stage began with precision shooting at 300 yards under time pressure. Competitors had to engage multiple targets within strict time limits, testing both accuracy and speed. Sarah watched as the experienced marksmen moved through the course with practiced efficiency, their movements economical and precise. When Sarah's turn came, she felt the familiar calm that descended during shooting. The nervous energy she had experienced during registration disappeared, replaced by focused concentration. She engaged each target methodically, placing shots with mechanical precision while maintaining awareness of the time constraints. Her performance drew immediate attention from the range officials and other competitors. Sarah's shots were not only accurate but incredibly fast, completed well within the time limits. Several spectators gathered to watch as she moved through the course with fluid efficiency. The second stage involved shooting at 600 yards with changing wind conditions. This was where many recreational shooters began to struggle, as reading wind became critical to accuracy. Sarah spent extra time observing environmental indicators, using the skills her grandfather had drilled into her through countless hours of practice. Officer Williams, who was shooting at the station next to Sarah, watched in amazement as the teenager adjusted for wind conditions with the expertise of a veteran marksman. Sarah's shots continued to find their targets with remarkable consistency, even as other competitors began missing due to environmental factors. During the lunch break, word about Sarah's performance had spread throughout the competition. Groups of law enforcement and military personnel gathered to discuss the unexpected standout performer. Some expressed disbelief that a civilian teenager could compete at such a high level, while others began asking serious questions about her potential. Detective Morrison found Sarah eating lunch alone, studying her scorecard and reviewing notes for the afternoon stages. He sat down beside her, explaining that she was currently leading the competition by a significant margin. Sarah seemed surprised by this information, having been too focused on her own performance to pay attention to overall standings. Morrison warned Sarah that the afternoon stages would be more challenging, with longer distances and more complex scenarios. He also mentioned that several military recruiters had noticed her performance and were asking questions about her background and future plans. Sarah felt a mixture of pride and apprehension at this unexpected attention. The third stage took place at 800 yards, with shooters required to engage targets from various positions including prone, kneeling, and standing. This stage separated technical marksmen from true precision shooters, as maintaining accuracy across different shooting positions required exceptional skill and training. Sarah excelled at this stage, her scores remaining consistently high, regardless of shooting position. Her grandfather's training had emphasized versatility, and Sarah could adapt to different stances without losing accuracy. Other competitors began taking notice of her technique, observing how she adjusted her breathing and stance for each position. Sergeant Chen approached Miguel during this stage, introducing himself and asking about Sarah's training background. The two military veterans quickly established a rapport, discussing Sarah's evident talent and potential future opportunities. Chen mentioned that he had never seen natural ability like Sarah's, even among professional military marksmen. The final stage was the most challenging, precision shooting at 1,200 yards under simulated stress conditions. Competitors had to hit targets while wearing heavy gear and following complex instructions delivered through radio headsets. This stage was designed to replicate field conditions where marksmen might operate under pressure. As Sarah prepared for the final stage, she noticed that a crowd had gathered to watch. Word about her performance had attracted attention from throughout the base, including senior military officers who rarely attended such competitions. The pressure was unlike anything she had experienced. But Sarah found strength in her grandfather's teachings about mental discipline. The 1,200-yard targets appeared impossibly small through her scope, complicated by heat mirages and shifting wind patterns. Sarah took extra time to study the conditions, making precise calculations for bullet drop and wind drift. She could hear radio chatter and feel the weight of the tactical gear, but her focus remained absolute. Her first shot at the extreme distance struck within inches of the target center, earning murmurs of approval from the watching crowd. Each subsequent shot found its mark with mechanical precision, Sarah's grouping tightening with each round fired. By the completion of the stage, she had achieved something unprecedented. When the final scores were announced, Sarah had not only won the competition, but had done so by the largest margin in the event's history. Her combined score exceeded that of the second-place finisher, a veteran police sniper with 15 years of experience, by an almost unbelievable amount. The award ceremony took place in front of a crowd that included base commanders and law enforcement officials from across the region. When Sarah's name was called as the overall winner, the applause was thunderous. Many of the competitors who had initially questioned her presence now stood and cheered for the young marksman, who had redefined their understanding of shooting excellence. Colonel Marcus Thompson had been observing the competition from the command building's observation deck, using high-powered binoculars to watch the most promising shooters. As the base's senior marksmanship instructor and a former Navy SEAL with 23 years of service, Thompson had seen exceptional shooting before. But what he witnessed during Sarah's final stage performance was something entirely different. Thompson had commanded sniper teams in Iraq and Afghanistan, working with some of the most elite marksmen in the military. He understood the difference between good shooting and transcendent ability. Through his binoculars, he watched Sarah make shots that defied conventional understanding of civilian capabilities. Her technique was flawless, her composure unshakable, and her accuracy unprecedented. After the awards ceremony, Thompson made his way down to the range to meet this remarkable young shooter. He found Sarah packing her equipment while her grandfather spoke with other competitors. The teenager appeared calm and focused, showing none of the excitement or bravado that Thompson might have expected from someone who had just achieved such a stunning victory. Thompson introduced himself to Sarah and Miguel, explaining his background and expressing genuine amazement at Sarah's performance. He asked detailed questions about her training history, shooting frequency, and future plans. Sarah answered respectfully but without the enthusiasm that most young people showed when meeting a decorated military officer. What impressed Thompson most was Sarah's matter-of-fact attitude about her abilities. She showed no false modesty but also no arrogance, simply acknowledging her performance as the result of disciplined training and practice. This combination of exceptional skill and grounded perspective was exactly what Thompson looked for in potential special operations candidates. Thompson asked Miguel if he could speak privately with Sarah about possible military opportunities. Miguel agreed, understanding that his granddaughter had reached a level where her abilities might open doors he couldn't provide. Thompson led Sarah to a quiet area overlooking the range where they could talk without interruption. Thompson explained that he had been involved in military marksmanship training for over 2 decades, working with snipers from every branch of the armed forces. He had never encountered a civilian shooter with Sarah's combination of natural talent and technical precision. Her scores from the competition would qualify her for the most elite military sniper programs. Sarah listened politely as Thompson described various military career paths that might suit her abilities. He mentioned specialized training programs, educational opportunities, and the chance to serve alongside the most skilled marksmen in the world. Thompson was careful to present military service as an option rather than a pressure, respecting Sarah's age and civilian status. What surprised Thompson was Sarah's thoughtful response to his presentation. Instead of the excitement he usually saw from young people considering military careers, Sarah asked detailed questions about training requirements, service obligations, and the realities of military life. Her questions revealed a maturity and seriousness that impressed the veteran officer. Thompson provided Sarah with his contact information and several informational packets about military marksmanship programs. He emphasized that she should take time to consider her options and discuss them with her family. However, he also stressed that opportunities like this were rare, and her exceptional abilities shouldn't be wasted. The drive home was quiet, with both Sarah and Miguel processing the day's events. Miguel was proud of his granddaughter's achievement, but also concerned about the attention she had attracted. He had trained Sarah to be an exceptional marksman, but he hadn't anticipated that her abilities would draw interest from the highest levels of military leadership. Sarah spent the following week researching military sniper programs and special operations units. She learned about training requirements, deployment schedules, and career progression opportunities. The more she read, the more intrigued she became by the possibility of using her abilities in meaningful service. At school, Sarah's confidence continued to grow, though her classmates remained unaware of her weekend achievement. She found herself less affected by their mockery and more focused on her future possibilities. The knowledge that she possessed exceptional abilities gave her strength to endure the daily social challenges of high school. Colonel Thompson contacted Miguel later that week, following up on his conversation with Sarah. He explained that he had been thinking about Sarah's potential and wanted to offer her an opportunity to observe advanced military training exercises. Thompson believed that seeing elite units in action might help Sarah understand what military service could offer. Thompson arranged for Sarah to visit Fort Braxton during a special operations training exercise. She would observe Navy SEAL sniper teams conducting advanced marksmanship training, giving her insight into professional military standards and expectations. The visit would be unofficial, but it would provide valuable perspective on potential career paths. Sarah accepted the invitation, curious to see how her abilities compared to those of elite military marksmen. Miguel drove her to the base on a crisp Saturday morning, both of them uncertain about what to expect from this unique opportunity. The training exercise involved multiple sniper teams conducting precision shooting under various stress conditions. Sarah watched from an observation area as Navy SEALs engaged targets at extreme distances while carrying full combat loads and operating under time pressure. Their level of professionalism and teamwork was impressive, but their shooting accuracy was something Sarah found she could relate to. During a break in the exercise, Thompson introduced Sarah to several of the SEAL marksmen. Staff Sergeant Michael Rodriguez, the team's senior sniper, was initially skeptical about a teenage civilian observing their training. However, when Thompson mentioned Sarah's competition scores, Rodriguez's attitude shifted to respectful curiosity. Rodriguez asked Sarah about her shooting background and training methods. When she described some of her grandfather's techniques and her practice regimen, Rodriguez nodded with understanding. He explained that many of the principles Miguel had taught Sarah were identical to those used in military sniper training, suggesting that her grandfather's instruction had been exceptionally thorough. Thompson suggested that Sarah demonstrate her abilities for the SEAL team, using their range and equipment. Several team members expressed interest in seeing the civilian shooter who had impressed their commanding officer. Sarah felt nervous about shooting in front of elite military marksmen, but she also felt excited by the challenge. The demonstration took place at 800 yards, using the same targets and conditions the SEAL team had been training with. Sarah borrowed one of their rifles, taking time to familiarize herself with the different equipment. The weapon was heavier and more complex than her usual rifle, but the fundamental principles remained the same. Sarah's first shot with the unfamiliar rifle struck within inches of the bullseye, immediately capturing the attention of the watching SEALs. Her subsequent shots formed an incredibly tight group, demonstrating that her abilities weren't dependent on specific equipment or familiar conditions. The SEAL marksmen exchanged glances of amazement and respect. Rodriguez approached Sarah after her demonstration, his expression serious and thoughtful. He explained that he had been a military sniper for 8 years and had never seen civilian shooting of such quality. Rodriguez asked if Sarah had ever considered military service, emphasizing that her abilities could save lives and serve important national security purposes. The conversation with Rodriguez had a profound impact on Sarah. For the first time, she began to understand that her shooting abilities weren't just a hobby or competition skill. They represented a potential way to make a meaningful contribution to something larger than herself. The possibility of using her talents to protect others gave new significance to all her training and practice. Thompson noticed the change in Sarah's demeanor after her interaction with the SEAL team. She seemed more serious and focused, asking detailed questions about military training standards and operational requirements. Thompson realized that Sarah was beginning to view military service not as an abstract possibility, but as a concrete career path. As they prepared to leave the base, Thompson made Sarah an offer that would change everything. He explained that he was authorized to recommend exceptional candidates for accelerated military programs that could begin immediately after high school graduation. Sarah's demonstrated abilities and mature attitude made her an ideal candidate for such an opportunity. Colonel Thompson's offer was both thrilling and overwhelming for Sarah. He explained that exceptional candidates could enter specialized military programs immediately after high school, bypassing traditional recruitment processes. Sarah would undergo intensive training with elite units, learning skills that went far beyond marksmanship. The opportunity represented a direct path to the highest levels of military service. Thompson emphasized that such opportunities were extremely rare, typically reserved for candidates with proven exceptional abilities and demonstrated maturity. Sarah's performance at the competition, combined with her interaction with the SEAL team, had convinced him that she possessed both qualities. However, the decision would require serious consideration and family discussion. Miguel listened carefully as Thompson explained the program details and requirements. As a veteran himself, Miguel understood both the opportunities and challenges that military service would present for his granddaughter. He respected Thompson's judgment but wanted to ensure that Sarah fully understood what she would be choosing. Over the following weeks, Sarah found herself constantly thinking about Thompson's offer. She researched the military units and training programs he had described, learning about their missions and requirements. The more she learned, the more compelling the opportunity became. These units represented the pinnacle of military excellence, exactly the kind of challenge that appealed to her. At school, Sarah's academic performance remained strong, but her focus had shifted to subjects that would support military service. She excelled in mathematics and physics, understanding their applications to ballistics and tactical planning. Her physical fitness improved as she began training with military standards in mind. Sarah's classmates remained oblivious to the dramatic opportunities developing in her life. Jessica Fleming continued her occasional mockery, unaware that the quiet girl she tormented was being recruited by elite military units. Sarah found their petty concerns increasingly irrelevant as she contemplated a future filled with real purpose and meaning. Miguel arranged for Sarah to meet with other veterans who could provide perspective on military service. These conversations helped Sarah understand both the rewards and sacrifices that military life would require. She learned about deployment schedules, family separation, and the physical and emotional demands of special operations service. One particularly meaningful conversation was with Maria Santos, a female veteran who had served as a military intelligence officer. Santos explained the unique challenges that women faced in military service, particularly in combat-related roles. She emphasized the importance of mental toughness and the ability to earn respect through performance, rather than demanding it through rank or position. Santos was impressed by Sarah's maturity and focus, noting qualities that would serve her well in military environments. She encouraged Sarah to pursue the opportunity with Thompson, explaining that such chances were extremely rare and that Sarah's abilities were genuinely exceptional. Santos offered to serve as a mentor if Sarah decided to pursue military service. Thompson maintained regular contact with Sarah during this decision period, providing additional information and answering her questions. He arranged for her to speak with other successful graduates of similar programs, giving her realistic expectations about training intensity and career progression. These conversations reinforced Sarah's growing interest in military service. During one phone conversation, Thompson mentioned that Sarah's competition performance had attracted attention from other military branches as well. The Marine Corps and Army had both expressed interest in recruiting her, creating multiple potential paths for her talents. Thompson emphasized that such widespread interest was unprecedented for a civilian candidate. Sarah appreciated having multiple options, but she found herself most drawn to the Navy SEAL programs that Thompson represented. The combination of precision marksmanship and tactical versatility appealed to her, as did the unit's reputation for excellence and teamwork. The SEALs she had met during her base visit had impressed her with their professionalism and dedication. As Sarah's senior year progressed, she began making concrete plans for military service. She maintained her grades while increasing her physical training and continuing her marksmanship practice with Miguel. Her grandfather adjusted their training sessions to include more tactical scenarios and stress-inducing conditions. Miguel could see the determination growing in Sarah's eyes as she prepared for this new direction. He was proud of her decision, but also concerned about the dangers she would face. As a combat veteran himself, Miguel understood the realities of military service in ways that Sarah was only beginning to comprehend. Sarah's parents were initially shocked when she revealed her plans and the opportunity Thompson had offered. They had assumed that her weekend library visits were for academic study, never imagining that their quiet daughter was developing world-class marksmanship skills. The revelation required extensive family discussions and adjustments to their expectations. After several family meetings and conversations with Thompson, Sarah's parents agreed to support her decision. They could see the passion and purpose that military service represented for their daughter, and they trusted Miguel's judgment about her abilities and preparedness. Their support was crucial for Sarah's confidence moving forward. Thompson arranged for Sarah to complete preliminary qualification testing at Fort Braxton during spring break. This would be her first formal military evaluation, testing not just her shooting abilities but also her physical fitness, psychological resilience, and leadership potential. The results would determine her eligibility for accelerated programs. The testing week was intense and comprehensive, unlike anything Sarah had previously experienced. She underwent medical examinations, psychological evaluations, and extensive interviews with military psychologists. The marksmanship testing was only one component of a thorough assessment designed to identify candidates suitable for elite military service. Sarah's shooting performance during the formal testing exceeded even her competition results. She consistently placed shots within impossibly tight groups at extreme distances, demonstrating accuracy that impressed even the military evaluators. Her scores placed her in the top percentile of all candidates they had ever tested. The psychological evaluations revealed the mental toughness and emotional stability that Miguel's training had developed. Sarah showed exceptional ability to perform under pressure, maintain focus during stress, and recover quickly from setbacks. These qualities were essential for special operations service. The physical fitness testing presented Sarah's greatest challenge, as her training had focused primarily on marksmanship rather than overall athleticism. However, her natural coordination and disciplined approach to training allowed her to meet the minimum standards. Thompson noted that her physical conditioning could be improved during formal military training. The interview portions of the evaluation process revealed Sarah's intelligence, maturity, and genuine motivation for military service. She articulated her goals clearly and demonstrated understanding of the sacrifices that military life would require. The evaluators were impressed by her realistic expectations and serious commitment. When the testing week concluded, Thompson informed Sarah that she had qualified for every program she had expressed interest in. Her scores were exceptional across all categories, making her one of the most promising candidates the military had encountered. Thompson emphasized that such comprehensive qualification was extremely rare. Sarah felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension as she contemplated the reality of her military future. The testing had shown her that she was capable of meeting military standards, but it had also revealed the intensity and demands that lay ahead. She understood that accepting Thompson's offer would fundamentally change her life. With graduation approaching, Sarah faced the final decision about her future path. She could choose the military route that Thompson offered, or she could pursue traditional college education and civilian careers. The choice would determine not just her immediate future, but the entire direction of her adult life. Sarah spent considerable time discussing the decision with Miguel, who understood better than anyone the magnitude of the choice she faced. He reminded her that exceptional abilities carried responsibility to use them meaningfully, but also emphasized that the decision had to be entirely her own. Miguel would support whatever choice Sarah made. The final factor in Sarah's decision came during a conversation with Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, whom she had met during her SEAL team observation. Rodriguez called to check on her decision process and to share his perspective on military service. His words helped Sarah understand that her abilities represented an opportunity to serve something greater than herself. Sarah made her final decision on a quiet Sunday morning at the shooting range with her grandfather. As she completed a perfect grouping at 1,000 yards, she realized that this gift she possessed was meant for something greater than personal satisfaction or competition victories. She turned to Miguel and told him she was ready to accept Colonel Thompson's offer and begin her military journey. Miguel smiled with pride and concern, understanding that his granddaughter was choosing a path that would challenge everything he had taught her, while building upon the foundation they had created together. He embraced Sarah, knowing that their weekend training sessions had been preparing her for this moment from the very beginning. Sarah called Colonel Thompson that afternoon to formally accept his offer. Thompson was pleased but not surprised by her decision, having seen the determination and sense of purpose that had grown in Sarah during their conversations. He began immediately outlining the next steps in her military preparation and entry process. The remaining weeks of high school took on a different meaning for Sarah. She maintained her academic performance while preparing for the dramatic life change ahead. Her classmates remained unaware of her plans, continuing their usual social dynamics while Sarah focused on a future they couldn't imagine. Jessica Fleming attempted one final cruel comment about Sarah's antisocial behavior during the last week of school. Sarah simply smiled and wished Jessica well in her future endeavors, a response that left the popular girl confused and slightly unsettled. Sarah felt no need for revenge or explanation. She was moving toward a future where such petty concerns would be irrelevant. Graduation day arrived with bittersweet emotions for Sarah's family. While other parents worried about college choices and career uncertainty, Sarah's parents knew their daughter was embarking on a path that would test her in ways they could barely comprehend. They were proud of her achievement and courage, but also fearful for her safety. Miguel felt a complex mixture of emotions as he watched Sarah receive her diploma. The quiet granddaughter he had trained at the shooting range was about to become a professional warrior in service to her country. He knew he had given her the skills and mindset she would need, but he also understood that military service would change her in ways he couldn't predict. 2 weeks after graduation, Sarah reported to Fort Braxton for the beginning of her accelerated military training program. Colonel Thompson personally welcomed her to the base, introducing her to the instructors and fellow candidates who would shape her initial military experience. Sarah was the youngest member of her training group, but her qualifications earned immediate respect from instructors and peers. The training was more intense than anything Sarah had previously experienced, combining advanced marksmanship instruction with tactical skills, physical conditioning, and leadership development. She excelled in shooting-related training, while working hard to meet standards in other areas. Her disciplined approach and willingness to learn impressed her. Instructors. Sarah's first major challenge came during a comprehensive field exercise designed to test candidates under realistic operational conditions. She performed exceptionally during marksmanship portions, but struggled with some of the physical demands and tactical coordination required for team operations. The experience taught her that individual excellence needed to be balanced with team effectiveness. Her shooting abilities continued to amaze instructors and fellow candidates throughout training. Sarah consistently achieved scores that exceeded program standards, often by substantial margins. However, she learned that military marksmanship involved more than pure accuracy, requiring skills like rapid target engagement, shooting under stress, and coordinating with team members. During advanced training phases, Sarah worked with some of the most elite marksmen in the military. These instructors recognized her exceptional natural talent, while helping her develop the tactical skills and military mindset necessary for operational effectiveness. Sarah learned to apply her shooting abilities in complex scenarios involving multiple targets, time pressure, and coordination with other team members. The psychological aspects of military training proved challenging, but ultimately strengthening for Sarah. She learned to function effectively under extreme stress, make quick decisions in chaotic situations, and maintain performance standards even when exhausted or under pressure. These skills, built upon the mental discipline Miguel had taught her while expanding into new areas. Sarah's leadership potential became evident during team exercises where her calm demeanor and analytical skills helped groups solve complex problems. Instructors noted her ability to remain focused under pressure and her talent for finding solutions that others missed. These qualities marked her as a candidate for eventual leadership positions. After completing initial training phases, Sarah received her first operational assignment with a Navy SEAL unit, specializing in precision operations. The assignment represented the culmination of her training and the beginning of her professional military career. Sarah would finally have the opportunity to use her exceptional abilities in service to her country. Her new unit initially viewed Sarah with curiosity and some skepticism, unsure how a young female civilian turned military would fit into their established team dynamics. However, Sarah's shooting demonstration during her first week eliminated any doubts about her technical abilities. Her groupings at extreme distances exceeded anything the team's previous snipers had achieved. Sarah's first operational deployment took her to a training exercise in an allied country, where her unit worked with international special operations forces. The exercise provided Sarah with her first taste of the complex, high-stakes environment where her skills would ultimately be employed. She performed exceptionally, earning respect from both American and Allied personnel. The exercise culminated in a precision shooting demonstration where marksmen from multiple countries competed in various challenges. Sarah's performance was dominant, achieving scores that impressed even veteran snipers with decades of experience. Her success brought recognition not just to herself, but to the training programs that had developed her abilities. Returning from the exercise, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her from a mocked high school student to a respected military marksman. She thought about her grandfather's patient training, Colonel Thompson's recognition of her potential, and the chain of events that had revealed her true calling. The transformation seemed almost impossible to believe. Sarah maintained regular contact with Miguel, sharing what she could about her training and experiences while respecting operational security requirements. Miguel was proud of her achievements but also concerned about the dangerous missions she might face. Their conversations provided Sarah with emotional anchoring to her civilian roots. Colonel Thompson continued to monitor Sarah's progress, noting her exceptional performance evaluations and the respect she had earned from her unit. He had recognized something special in the quiet teenager at the shooting competition, and Sarah was exceeding even his high expectations. Thompson began considering Sarah for even more specialized roles within the military's most elite units. Sarah's former classmates occasionally appeared in her thoughts, particularly when she encountered situations that tested her courage or resolve. She wondered what Jessica Fleming and others would think if they could see the quiet girl they had mocked now serving as a professional warrior. However, these thoughts were fleeting. Sarah's focus remained firmly on her duties and continued development. The transformation was complete. The shy teenager who had been invisible in high school hallways had become a confident, capable military professional whose abilities served purposes far greater than personal achievement. Sarah had found her calling, using the gift her grandfather had helped her discover to protect others and serve her country. As Sarah prepared for her next assignment, she carried with her the lessons from every phase of her journey. Miguel's patient instruction had provided the foundation, Thompson's recognition had opened the door, and her own determination had carried her through the challenges. The quiet sniper had found her place in a world where excellence was measured not by popularity or social acceptance, but by the ability to perform when lives depended on precision and courage. Sarah Martinez had discovered that being different wasn't a weakness to be hidden, but a strength to be developed and shared with the world. Her story would inspire other young people who felt misunderstood or overlooked, showing them that exceptional abilities combined with dedicated effort could lead to extraordinary opportunities. The girl they had laughed at had become someone they could only admire from a distance.